welcome to the program where today we'll have the chance to have our hearts touched, our relationships deepened, our bodies strengthened and our minds opened.
Oh yeah, it's the kind of holistic service you should expect from InFocus Recouched. We deliver.
Well, let's get straight into it, shall we? How about a sailing cruise to Vanuatu?
Oh, yes, please.
It's a pleasure to welcome Nick Brightman, his CEO of the Pacific Yacht Ministries, to the program. Thanks so much for making time, Nick.
Thank you, James.
Now, I think we should let out our audience in on a little secret. You and I have met before.
Oh, we sure have, yes.
I guess the first time we met was in England.
In England at Newbold College.
That's right.
Yeah,
that'd be back
right.
in the 80s.
Yes, it was, yes.
And you've had just a really fascinating career in the interim. You've worked with the Advanced Development and Relief Agency all across Southern Africa. You've worked with drug addicts here in the city of Sydney. And now you're CEO of Pacific Yacht Ministries. Now, what is that?
Pacific Yacht Ministries is a lay organisation, and what happened actually to bring it about was that there was a guy who was sailing the seas in his lovely luxury yacht.
Okay.
And as he looked at the poverty around, especially in the area of Vanuatu, he said, I should be doing something.
Yeah, there's more to life than just like sailing around
yes, pina
meaninglessly.
coladas on the poop deck of your luxury yacht was a bit much for this guy.
Right.
And so he came back to Brisbane, actually, and got in touch with some friends, and they began to, and that was it.
Okay.
And now we have several volunteers and several yachts involved.
And so did he donate a yacht, or he got it started?
He had his own.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about a yacht, what are we talking about here? Is this really a power boat, or what does it look like?
They're sailboats.
Okay.
Catamarans normally, but not necessarily. We have they always privately owned. We don't own boats as such.
Okay.
And the skippers of those boats are the owners of those boats, and they volunteer their boat and their time. We advertise for medical health professional volunteers to go out, and so they form crews and they live on the boats, and that's how they work. We've been doing it now for, 10 years nearly.
That's incredible. Now, for some of us, the idea of going on a cruise around to Vanuatu and all, I guess there's outlying islands and so forth. I mean, what a better way to spend some time. Are these very relaxing, sort of enjoyable holiday cruises with a little bit of medicine on the side?
Well, actually, no, they're not. They're quite hard work. We certainly make sure that the volunteers get some time to do some snorkeling. Sure. Because the snorkeling is great.
Right,
and the scuba diving is very good too in Vanuatu with the wrecks from the Second World War. However, we're there to work.
Of course.
And the days begin early and they go on till late. And we might see, we're seeing people who haven't seen a doctor or a dentist for years because there is not the medical service in some of these island communities that we have here in Australia.
Well, help us understand the topography of Vanuatu. Are there a number of outlying islands, and how many, and how diverse, and how far are they in between?
There are 83 islands altogether. Okay. And they stretch up almost to the Solomon Islands in the north and right down halfway to New Zealand, basically, I think, in the south. And so they're quite it's about 1,000 miles, 1,000 nautical miles from top to bottom.
So you can imagine that if you're on one of these islands really quite far from even the capital of Vanuatu, your access to healthcare, I suppose, is very limited.
Oh, we're seeing people that have not seen a dentist, for example, all their life.
Wow.
And we see the most amazing things. It's amazing how people live with pain and suffering. We perhaps don't appreciate in the Western world. And so we have quite long queues for people who with some quite interesting problems.
Maybe give us sort of a description so we can visualize. The yacht comes into port. Are people expecting you?
Yes. Normally what we do, we work very closely with the government of Vanuatu. Okay. We have a memorandum of understanding with them that enables us to work as health professionals in their country.
Which is important because I guess most of the crew comes from Australia.
Yes.
And so they have Australian qualifications.
Yes.
Right.
And therefore it's very important that we work according to their schedule and their agenda, using their medicines and not introducing our own stuff, if
Right,
you like,
sure,
because
sure.
obviously that's not going to be of any benefit. And so, yes, we work very closely with the Ministry of Health. We always have a team of Ministry of Health officials on the yachts working with us as well.
Okay.
We always will have a Ministry of Health dentist, and very often a doctor. Our own doctors who go out very often might be skills transferring or doing some training.
Oh,
They
excellent.
might go to the local hospitals and do some upskilling there. But by and large, we work with the local Nevan health teams. We do a lot of immunisation. We have, with the yachts, we have good cold chain. We have very good fridges.
Excellent.
And we can achieve work that without the expatriate involvement, it would be difficult for them to do. So it's a very good partnership.
Now, you mentioned the local hospitals, but I'd imagine when you have 83 islands, there'd be a lot of islands that don't have a hospital. Is that right?
There's only really 2 or 3 hospitals in the whole of the area that we work. Yes. Not the whole country, James, because the government have asked us to look after the northern province, which is probably 20 or 30 islands up there in the north of the country, which is the most inaccessible for them. And our yachts can get into these places much more effectively. In fact, if I can just give a quick anecdote, about 3 years ago, for the first time ever, we immunised every single child in Toba province. Something that had never happened before.
How many you may not know this offhand, but how many children would there be in a province, just roughly?
Oh, there'll be several thousand.
Right, okay. So this is really changing the trajectory of a lot of people's lives, because if once you have the immunization, a lot of you'll be immune to some of these diseases that can kill people, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely.
So does this ministry also do you share the gospel as you go as well, or is it primarily a healthcare ministry?
What we've done is we've divided Pacific Yacht Ministries into 2 sections, PYM Health and PYM Outreach. And we are Christians, we're Seventh-day Adventists. Not all the volunteers are, they don't have to be, but those of us who are running the program are, and therefore we don't work on the Sabbath. Unless it's an emergency. And
you don't do the routine work on the
Sabbath. We don't do the routine
right?
clinics, not normally, unless there's suffering. If there's obviously suffering, we're not going to go away and leave them because of that.
Absolutely.
But the workers do work hard and they need a rest as well.
Absolutely. Now, if people want to learn more about the ministry, or if they want to get involved and join the teams, what's the website?
The website is called Pacific Yacht Ministries, pym.org.au.
Okay, great, and it's right there on your screens. Thanks so much, Nick, for the work that you do. You're really walking in the footsteps of Christ, to be out there bringing healing and bringing the love of God in a very practical way to those islands. I pray that God continues to bless you.
You know what, Dora? Never have I been so tempted to go and study something medical. Cruising the Pacific. Oh, man.
I know, but come on, it's hard work, and that was pretty clear. And those guys are volunteers who probably have to pay pretty much their own way.
Yeah, but still, I think it'd be incredible to visit those remote islands. They look fantastic.
I know what you mean. Time for an ad break now. We'll be back in a sec.
We live our lives running around, rarely stopping to ask ourselves where we're going and what our final destination is. In the end, our lives become little more than routine. Step beyond and discover a path that offers comfort, love and hope. Visit hopeoffer.com/step beyond or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Hi, welcome back. Coming up in just a sec is a Food in Focus segment with Sue Rad, where she introduces a food I had never even heard of until she brought it into the studio.
But first up, let's check out this chat you had with Trafford Fisher, Ken, on introverts and extroverts. Do you know which one you are?
Well, of course, if you want to know about family and relationships, who do you trust? Two men. How are you, Trafford?
I'm very well. Fancy two men talking about relationships and family. But why not?
We know all about it. What do you got for us today?
I'm intrigued by the whole introvert-extrovert thing.
Okay.
Now, hey, I'm a bit of an extrovert.
Which is?
I'm energised by people. I think it's about energy. You know, people seem to get energy by spending time with lots of other people, but then you get the person who, I just love to be by myself, and they are energised by time alone.
Okay. So extroverts typically sort of the outgoing, gregarious,
that's how we measure them generally.
life of the party sort of.
They're the so-and-so's arrived at the party here. And the introvert is the quiet person who comes in. I think that sort of character traits, but it is to me a bit about how do we charge our batteries? How do we get this sort of, you know?
Well, my question is, Trafford, what happens when a man and a woman get together, fall madly in love, get married, and it turns out one of them is an extrovert and the other is an introvert?
And it happens. They are attracted together a
Opposites
bit.
attract, eh? Yeah.
But you're right. You're implying opposites can repel.
She talks, he listens.
Yeah, well, you can do that. But also, the things that attracted her, say he was the extrovert, right? And she's, this guy's energised and I love spending time with him, and it's a party.
So much fun, yeah.
You're fun, it's alive, and she loves that. But when it goes on, and she just, that could is too much for her. The key is finding mutual times for both. How do we find times that are for us, that work for both of us? Now, one always might be a little bit of a loser in some way, like, let's do something that's a bit exciting. The person, no, I need my quiet time. So what are they going to find? And I remember the psychologist used to say, I need my time, my wife needs her time, but we need our time. And I think that's the secret, but it has to be our time that's mutually agreeable.
Is there also some compromise involved there? I mean, sometimes I might not be in the mood for a party, but I'll do it for you, or I might not be in a mood for a quiet canoe over the lake, but I'll do it for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think what we've got to remember is, if we see extrovert, introvert on a continuum, right? So if I'm extrovert, that suggests I can't be an introvert. Or if I'm introvert, I can't be an extrovert. But I think if we shift that model and say all of us have times when we enjoy social interaction, and we need social interaction,
absolutely.
but we also need quiet times. But one tends to be a little bit more oriented than the other. And I think you're right. If we can find times where we can say, hey, I had a great time at the party last night, you're going to do some quiet time today, what can we do together? It can work, it just takes that dialogue. Don't criticise each other, don't change each other, but find ways of accepting and working together. You can do it.
Words of wisdom. Thanks, Trafford. We didn't do too bad for two.
We did right for two men. Thank you.
You won't believe it, but God in the Holy Bible gave the prophet Ezekiel a recipe using ancient super grains to make an ancient superfood. Essenes, 100 years before Christ, the Essene Supreme bread. It's still made today if you know where to buy it. It's made of sprouted grain. Sue, tell us about it. I'm going to try some.
Yes, go ahead. Basically, sprouted grain breads are made, as you suggest, from sprouted grains. So it can be any grains like spelt or kamut, for example, but often they even add things like lentils inside or millet. So it's a very wholesome cake. So it's basically the sprouts crafted together in a loaf and looks a bit like a cake, but it contains no flour, usually no additives like sugar or vinegar or milk or preservatives. So it's really good for those people who are looking for more whole grains that are free of these additives.
You know, it's actually very tasty. This one's got dates and walnuts and all sorts of scrumptious things.
That one's perfect for a snack food. So if you're looking to replace those biscuits that come out of packets, why not just have some sprouted grain bread with dates and with walnuts? It's really delicious.
Now, sprouts are very nutritious. Tell us why.
They are, because when you sprout any seed, you bring it back to life, you reduce the amount of phytates and various inhibitors like trypsin inhibitor, and that helps release the nutrients better. So it releases the minerals. So you actually get better availability of those nutrients inside your body.
So it's a nutrient-dense bread. It really truly is a superfood.
So everyone's interested at the moment in ancient grains and whole grains, and this is probably the prime example of a superfood amongst the breads category because it is made from whole grains that have been sprouted. Yeah.
Now, it's not overcooked, so the nutrients don't get
Well,
demolished
indeed,
along the way.
it's not cooked.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the Essenes made it without any formal way of cooking. I believe they used to sort of cook it by putting it on rocks just in the sun.
They were allowed to warm it in the Israeli sun 2,000 years ago. That's the only cooking.
Yes,
Yeah.
so, you know, it's even suitable for people who are on raw food diets, the correct one.
Yeah. No, and just tell us a little bit about how do you use it and how does it work?
So you could use it just like you use ordinary bread, but just a few practical tips. You need a moist, wet knife when you slice it because it's quite sticky, and you can't slice it super thin because it can crumble, but you don't need a lot to be full. The other thing I love about it is it has a long shelf life. So once you buy it, you can keep it in your fridge for 3 months if unopened, and even once you open it, it lasts for several weeks, I found. And you can even freeze it.
Yes,
so it's got a much better shelf life than ordinary bread.
Now, I remember Sue was telling me it's not just the nutrients in this, it actually does wonders for your stomach. Tell us about that.
Well, one area that we're particularly interested in at the moment is the whole gut microflora, the microbiome. So the bugs that live there and the products that they produce. And we know that eating more whole grains is very beneficial in terms of promoting and maintaining the colonies of those beneficial bacteria. So if you eat this kind of food, you're going to promote well-being because that's part of your immune system.
Now, where would you go and buy this? I mean, Prophet Ezekiel bread.
Well, that's right. It's not found everywhere. These particular range of sprouted grain breads are found in health food shops, and you can also buy it online, so you can see a website online. There are some other so-called sprouted grain breads in the supermarkets, but you need to be a bit wary of some of them because they're not true sprouted grain breads. They sometimes have added gluten, added flours, but they're trying to sort of pass under the radar as sprouted grain breads. So, you know, the true sprouted grain bread is one, as we said, just made of sprouted grains that are put together into a cake with no additives, and it can be particularly low in things like sodium. So if you have a look at, say, take the black cake.
Oh, you were going to show off the Prophet Ezekiel bread, weren't you?
I don't
Ezekiel
mind.
4
They're
verse
all
9.
really low. How many milligrams of sodium does
let me read that
have?
for you. It says 5 milligrams every 100 grams.
And how does the ordinary white bread from the supermarket compare?
Yes, well, let me get it the right way up.
So 5 milligrams versus
400.
400.
That's 80 times more salt in white bread.
So you can see why this is so much better for your blood pressure, okay? And if you were looking for a bread that's good for your blood pressure, if it's elevated, you should be looking for something that contains 120 milligrams or less. But these are super low.
Yeah, and they taste really nice.
So
I'm going to try this one, Sue.
Yeah, good for your blood pressure. Good for your gut health, good for all kinds of chronic diseases, and just another alternative if you're looking for something really wholesome to add more whole grains.
Folks, you really need to go and search for the ancient superfoods and just enjoy it. I think the recipe came from the whole Bible. Cheers.
Oh man, that sprouted bread with the dates in it, Dora, that was the bomb. Honestly, it was more like cake than bread.
Yeah, but so expensive.
Yeah, true.
I guess though, you can get a lot of the same goodness by just eating plain sprouts. They're a lot cheaper, or you could even sprout all kinds of things yourself.
Yeah, well, that's right. You're into activated almonds, aren't you?
I love it. It's not quite the same thing, but sprouting your own grains or beans, you know, any kind of stuff is pretty simple.
Okay, you'll have to show me sometime. Let's go to an ad break now. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
So you think you've got your future all planned out, right? Or maybe you're not sure yet what you want to do, who you want to be, but whatever path you choose to study, a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job, it helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Right, it's time to strap on your thinking cap good and tight now, because this next interview is with Dr. Vishal Mangalwadi. He's an Indian Christian philosopher, although in this segment I think he might be dealing more with maybe history and sociology, I guess. Don't look so scared, Dora. He's fascinating, I promise you.
Okay, if you say so, let's take a look.
It's unusual to have an internationally renowned Indian philosopher on the program, but maybe more unusual is that Dr. Vishal Mangalwadi's central thesis is that Western civilization is in decline, and that Western decline has everything to do with the Bible. It's a pleasure to welcome Vishal to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you, although my thesis is not very pleasant.
It isn't, is it? I hope that you're enjoying your time in Australia.
I am. It's been very busy, but good.
Well, some would argue that the West has been through a number of crises over the years. We've had World War II, we've had the Great Depression. Every time the West has bounced back bigger and stronger than ever. What makes you think this time's different?
Well, I hope that it will bounce back even better and will once again become a blessing to the whole world. What is different now is that the intellectual and moral foundations of the West have become much more shaky and weaker than they were at the end of the Second World War, for example.
But most people would argue that the greatest contributors to Western society in recent years have been people who are not Christians, people who, like Steve Jobs or Stephen Hawking or Albert Einstein, none of them were Christians. What makes you think that Christianity or a religion or faith is so important to the strength of Western society?
Well, the very simple question is, why weren't any of these born in China or India or Egypt or Africa? Why were they all produced by Western civilization? So my books are looking at the contribution the Bible made to creating the modern West. So these people were products of Western civilization, which is a product of the Bible.
But today, many of the greatest minds probably are being born in China and India and so forth. And none of those countries are built on the foundation of the Bible.
Well, modern India is in fact built by the Bible, and same is true of China. So it is in fact the Bible which has created the modern world. It created the modern West, and through the West it globalized the rest of the world. The Bible continues to turn Stone Age tribes. The problem with Stone Age tribes or with India or China is not that the people there lack intelligence, but our cultures never produced the modern science or modern understanding of economics or whatever. Therefore, we didn't produce the kind of people we could have been producing. We should have been producing them thousands of years ahead of the West, because the basic IQ is the same, but the difference was that we didn't have the Bible. But as the Bible has begun to work itself out in our cultures, now our cultures will and should produce and hopefully enrich the whole world.
Well, what particularly about the Bible? Obviously, we don't have a Christian majority in China or in India, and really probably not in most Western countries today. But what principles or what forces that come about through the work of the Bible or the word of the Bible has changed or created the energy in Western civilization?
Well, what my book is showing is that everything that has made the West great came from the Bible. So the understanding of who a human being is, the rights of human beings, the dignity of human beings, that we are not just monkeys, we are precious people made in God's image, and that is what gives us our rights. The confidence that the human mind can be an Einstein's mind or Steve Jobs' mind, a creative, innovative mind that can understand. This was an idea which came from the Bible through St. Augustine. The Greeks had actually accepted the Indian idea that the mind was the problem. So Indian religiosity or mysticism, meditation, was an attempt to kill the mind, silence thinking, but that human mind can know the truth, human words can articulate the truth. This was based on the assumption that God is a rational, speaking logos. Logic is part of who he is. He made us in his image, as thinking and speaking being. So human rationality is made in God's image. That's why human beings can know the truth. And the human beings should know the truth. That is the impulse behind the university movement.
Right.
That what the whole of the Old Testament is saying is, you must know the truth, you must believe the truth. The greatest sin is to worship false gods, false ideas. So it's our responsibility to seek the truth, believe the truth, live by the truth. That's the impulse behind the modern world, and that comes from the Bible.
You've made an incredible statement, and that is that the West was built on sexual energy. What do you mean by that?
Well, the greatest energy that built the modern West was not nuclear, was not electrical, was not petroleum, and was not green energy. It was sexual energy. The West alone was able to harness sexual energy to build strong families, which means strong women, strong children, strong economy, strong nation. The idea that one man should be married only to one woman in a lifelong and an exclusive relationship without other girlfriends and mistresses is not a Muslim idea.
That's right.
Prophet Muhammad himself had 13 wives and sex slaves and concubines. It's not a Buddhist idea. It's not a Hindu idea. It's not a secular idea. Marx didn't believe in it. Plato didn't believe in it. Freud didn't believe in it. And Hugh Hefner certainly doesn't believe in it. So this is a peculiarly Christian idea, which is not even a Jewish idea. Because one of the problems Jesus had with Jews was that they were divorcing their wives and taking other women. And Jesus said, no, this shouldn't be, because God created one Eve for one Adam, for two of them to be one flesh. To have children and to fill the earth, to establish the dominion over the earth. This was a peculiar idea, monogamy, that one man should have only one wife, which spread globally through the church. Like in India, it was only in 1870s when one of the greatest philosophers and social activists, Keshav Chandra Sen, began to argue that if India is to catch up with the West, one of the things we have to do is to institutionalize or legalize monogamy.
That's fascinating, and I know that there's a lot more that you could tell us. I want to recommend to our audience the book that made your world by Dr. Vishal, How the Bible Created the Modern Western World, and also Truth and Transformation you might want to take a look at as well.
So what? Monogamy is a uniquely Christian thing?
Apparently.
I'd never actually really thought about it.
Yeah, me neither. And now it's a Western culture thing, I guess, but we just don't realise. I told you you'd be fascinated, didn't I?
Look, Ken, I never doubted you, not even for a teeny tiny moment.
Yeah, whatever. Well, we've had fun today and learned stuff. I hope you did too.
Thanks so much for your company. We'll see you next week on InFocus Recouched.
God bless.